Hello my dear viewers, welcome to my channel. My name is Malena and in this video I'm going to talk about politeness. Politeness, in contrast to kindness, is characterized by social norms. And of course these social norms can vary from one culture to the other. In this video I'm going to mainly concentrate on the Western culture, but of course many of those points can be also applied and are applied in the Eastern or in other cultures as well. Politeness is very important if you want to be a classy and sophisticated lady. And there are certain points that are really basic, other points that are a bit more elevated, that are certainly not performed by many people. And this will be the second part of this video, so stay until the end because both is very important. All those points, and especially the high-level points, will strongly distinguish you from other people. They will make you very sympathetic, very likable, and of course give you the aura and the charisma of a sophisticated and classy woman. So politeness is a verbal or non-verbal behavior with which we treat other people in a respectful way. So historically it developed in the late Middle Ages or in the end of the Middle Ages, and the first place where it was incorporated was at court. And that's why it is also called courtesy, because those social norms and behaviors were established at court first and later on distributed among other social circles. So it is a very noble behavior that we should all aspire, of course. So let's start with the basics. Basic number 1. Always say thank you. This is very obvious, yet there are situations in which we might not do it or are just not thankful in the correct way. So it is also about being adequate. For example, if you are just buying a coffee in a coffee shop and the barista hands you the coffee, you will say thank you very much, but of course you shouldn't be overly super thankful with a lot of words and exaggerating that. On the other hand, if someone does you a favor, a very special favor, just something very extraordinary, you can be a little bit more thankful. You can express your thankfulness just with a little gift, for example, and this will set you apart from most people who just will say, oh, thank you very much, oh, that's so kind of you. Use those different ways of being thankful according to the situation, and of course always say thank you when someone does something for you, and even if it is their job or their duty to do that. Number 2. Always greet people. This is also quite obvious at first glance, but I'm sure that many of you, as me also, have been in the situations in which we didn't do something out of laziness or out of distraction. For example, it is obvious that you should always greet people that you know. Etiquette in that case is not that important, so it doesn't matter if they are older than you, more powerful than you, less powerful than you in the hierarchy, professional field. Just greet first, that's okay. But if you are entering a room, for example, you should also greet. I have often been in the situation where I was, for example, sitting in a waiting room at the doctor's office, and people were entering the waiting room. And there were always people who greeted and people who didn't. And guess who appeared much more sophisticated, much more sympathetic to me? The people who greeted. And the same applies to you. If you enter a room, no matter if it is a doctor's waiting room or some other room where there is a group of people, just greet. And you will also experience that some people will greet back and others not. If you are on the other side, if you are the person in the room and someone enters and greets, be the one who greets back. Because again, this will make you stand out and will make you very educated, sophisticated, classy, and of course super sympathetic. Number 3. Respect people's space and time. And here I'm referring to when you are, for example, entering a room, like an office or some other room, always knock on the door. Just don't enter just like that. And if you are calling someone, even if it is just a friend, always ask them if they have time for you at this moment. Because just because people pick up the phone doesn't mean that they have time or that they have a lot of time. So always ask if they have time for you now, how much time they have, etc., so that you don't or just start talking and the person is actually in a situation in which they cannot talk. This is something that happens very often. So be considerate in that way, and if you will apply these tips in those situations, you will be especially polite. Number 4. Help older or weaker people. This is actually something that we should have learned as children, and for sure most of us did, and it's also common sense, but still I see that in our society and like in different situations this is not so normal. And maybe it also depends a little bit on if you are living in a city, in a big city, or in a smaller town, the country you are living in, but you at least should always strive towards the best. So if you see someone elderly entering a bus, be the one who offers their seat, and don't wait until someone else does it, because sometimes nobody does, and then it's really, uncomfortable. Or help an elderly person over the street, to cross the street. If you see someone is struggling, for example, with directions, you see someone is struggling, just step in and explain them, help them, ask them, may I help you? And then just explain them the thing. This makes you really sophisticated and educated, and this is true class. And people will notice that. People around you will notice that. The person you asked to help will notice that. Because I also noticed that when people do those things, and it sets them apart. And you never know who might also be in this situation and which way it could also benefit you in the future. But of course, this shouldn't be like the main goal. But I'm just saying, you never know. So always try to show your best, most polite behavior. And number 5, the 5th basic, is speak respectfully. And with that I mean, if you speak about people, don't refer to them as this old guy or whatever. Just there are worse expressions, but talk about them in a respectful way. So don't call them names. Even if it is common to do that and those people are not in the situation and they don't hear you, it is still not polite, and it will just throw a bad light on you because other people will notice that. And also try to not, or don't, actually don't use vulgar expressions in your language. If you are in public situations or at work, just try to avoid those expressions. And last but not least, listen to people and let them speak. So let them finish their sentence and don't interrupt, because listening is also important in being respectful. Number 6. If you enter an office or even a shop, a big department store, a coffee shop, and you enter alone, and someone comes behind you, and they are not directly behind you, but you see that they are also coming, always hold the door open. Don't let the door slam in front of them. This is extremely impolite, but I see that so often. People are just became inconsiderate. They just think about themselves, lazy. Be the one who waits. When someone does that to me, no matter if man or woman, this is like a general rule of politeness. That's such a good impression I get of this person. Sometimes people are waiting, literally, I'm still quite far away, but they see me coming and they are just waiting, holding this door for me. And I'm always amazed by this level of politeness. And I can only encourage you to also aspire to have this level of politeness, of sophistication, of class, because this will set you apart. And as I said, you never know what can develop out of an interaction like that. Hold the door when you enter somewhere and you see someone is coming. Do it just for one person. You don't have to be like the door opener and waiting until everyone passes, but you know what I mean. Next tip, number 7. Don't embarrass others. And this is something that also characterizes a sophisticated and classy woman. Don't ask people intrusive and too personal questions. If they're not your close friends, just don't do that. Don't ask them, for example, why don't you actually have children? Something like that. Or how much do you earn? If you just got to know them and if you don't have like a special connection to them. Because sometimes this also happens that you immediately have like a extremely familiar connection to someone and then it's different, it's more natural. But I mean, in general, you should be a little bit more cautious in the beginning. And when you're getting to know people, even if the situation seems very familiar to you, rather be cautious and avoid those in kind of very personal questions. And what you should also avoid is to downgrade people even by accident. For example, let's say you have a PhD or a university degree, and then there is a group of academics, like people with university degrees, and then one person doesn't have one. So don't point that out. Like, you don't have the university degree. This is really, really impolite. And another example would be if among friends you suggest an activity, for example, that is very expensive and you know that one of those friends is very much on the budget and cannot afford that. And if you were a polite and sophisticated person, you would avoid to put people in a situation like that. So this is something that you should also remember. I myself always have to remember those points, especially when I'm stressed in specific situations that are not that obvious. So it's always good to repeat those positive, polite behaviors so that they really become you. Number 8, protect others from embarrassment. So this is especially important among us women, and I think that we should always be sisterhood mood and always protect other women. And here specifically with regard to politeness, I mean, if you see, for example, that if you're in a group and someone is attacking a person verbally, like either man or woman, but here I'm specifically referring to the women, then step in. You can do it in a polite way if it's like in a social situation, in a rather formal situation, because this also happens. You can either downgrade the comment a little bit by saying something, making it softer, or you can just change the topic. That's a very intelligent way of protecting another person from an embarrassing situation or from negative comment. And you will really, really stand out by doing this. And who knows, maybe you will find a new friend. Another thing would be if you see that another woman has something like lipstick on her teeth or something on her pants. Even if you don't know her, but you see that she's alone and she doesn't notice, go to her very, very discreetly, tell her. She will be super thankful, and you would also be, believe me. That's something that many don't do out of embarrassment, out of shyness, or just out of ignorance. And I'm also not perfect because I am very shy, and it has always been a challenge to just speak to a stranger. But in that way, try to develop yourself and try to be this woman who has this warmth towards the other women, the solidarity to protect them when they are like in embarrassing situations in a way. And here I also have quite interesting story that I have heard about. So maybe you know Edith Piaf, French singer. The story exists that Edith Piaf has been invited to a very formal event, and while they were at a dinner table with other people, other guests, there were those little, water bowls that are intended to clean your fingers in. And then it happened that Edith Piaf mistook this water bowl for water to drink. She just drank from it, and the other guests were already looking. They of course noticed that she just simply made an etiquette mistake. She didn't recognize that that's a water bowl. And then guess what the very polite and sophisticated host did? He took his water bowl as if it was the most normal thing to do, put it to his lips and drank from it. This is politeness. So see how far it can go. And now we will continue with point number 9. And that's to not mention delicate topics. So again, this is something advanced because you need a little bit of emotional and social intelligence for it, but I'm sure you all have if you are watching my channel, or at least you are very, very far on that journey. For example, many things are common sense, but other things are just topics like avoid, for example, talking about like something gross or a surgery when you're at dinner, because there might be people who will lose their appetite with that. Try to not hurt people's feelings, and this can happen very easily when you talk about religious or political topics. And of course, in many situations, those topics really come up, and I experience that so often. People just talk about politics. And sometimes I think maybe it would be better to avoid these topics, because there can always be someone whose feelings can be hurt by that. So just avoid that in social situations. I think that unless you are like with very good friends. So here we are really talking about situations with strangers or people you don't know that much. Topics that are super easy to talk about even among very, very different cultures, because I'm often in very mixed groups with different cultures and backgrounds. Topics that are always good are food. So food and beverages is a great topic. Travel is a great topic. Cultural events, music is always a great topic. And with those topics, you won't hurt anyone's feelings. Those topics always build bridges between the cultures and between the people with different backgrounds, because everyone can relate to one of those topics and can talk about that. And it's not so controversial. And the last point, number 10, always talk in a positive way. What do I mean by that? I mean that as a sophisticated, socially intelligent, classy woman, you should be in a way co-responsible for the mood. So the mood in this gathering that you are in. And I don't mean that you are the one who is responsible, but try to not influence the mood in a negative way, but try to influence it in a positive way, and you will always be liked and admired. For example, in a restaurant. So when you are in a restaurant, you actually don't like the food, or there is something really bad and you are in a group, don't be the one who's critical. Always try to see the positive aspects and talk about those. Just concentrate on something positive. So if you act politely and according those 10 points of politeness, you will always be perceived as sophisticated, refined, classy, and absolutely likable and sympathetic. And in the end, this is what we want and what will benefit us and the others. So it's a very, very positive thing to do and to aspire. If you like my tips, give me a thumbs up. I very much appreciate that. And also please comment. I really love to read about your opinion with regard to this topic. Leave me a comment down below, and I will see you in my next one.